We are continuing on with our NHL offseason plan series, and today we're looking at the number 6 ranked team from NHL's regular season, the Philadelphia Flyers. What moves will they make to try to get back to the playoffs next year? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, in case you're new to this series, we're doing a dedicated video for all 31 NHL teams, outlining what their offseason is likely going to look like. We're recapping their 19-20 season, looking at their cap space, what do they have for expiring contracts, so who are the RFAs and UFAs, and discussing what signings or trades we will likely see out of this organization to get ready for next year. So let's dive in first here with a 19-20 season recap for the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, as you can see on the screen here with their team stats, they finished with a record of 41, 21, and 7 for 89 points. They were one of the hottest teams in the NHL. Another big, long winning streak this season. And clearly, there was a long stretch there where they were the top team in the NHL. Nobody could seem to beat them. They had such an impressive streak. They ended up scoring 232 goals while only allowing 196, which was very impressive. So that's a plus 36 team rating on the goals for and against scale, which is tremendous. The power play was pretty good, 20.8% for 14th best. So, it's not fantastic, but certainly more than average, which is, where you want it to be or better. The penalty kill was also pretty stellar as well at 81.8 for 11th best in the NHL. Now, the Philadelphia Flyers went on to the 2020 Stanley Cup Playoffs in the bubble. So the Philadelphia Flyers qualified for the 2020 NHL Stanley Cup Playoffs. They battled in the top 4 tournament for one of the top 4 seeds. They ended up not having a ton of success in this year's playoff. After how their regular season finished, many thought they would have went a little bit further, but they're still apparently a few pieces away or a few steps away from making it to the conference final of the Stanley Cup final here. So now let's take a look at the cap space that the Flyers have and what expiring contracts they have to deal with this offseason as well. So the Flyers have 17 players under contract for next year, and they have $6.235 million in available salary cap space as of today. Now, they've already done a couple of things, including signing defenseman Robert Hagg, so that's already been taken care of. So obviously they don't have too many players that they need to get looked after here for next year, but they do have a few key pieces that should be interesting. So now let's take a look at their expiring contracts for this season. You see, for RFAs, they have defenseman Philippe Myers, who certainly made some great strides this year. I thought he was really good for Philly, so I fully expect him to get a contract without too much trouble. You've also got Nolan Patrick on there. He's not even a full RFA, so he's what they call a 10.2C free agent, so he's not offer sheet eligible by any other team because he did not get enough games played to have full RFA status. Obviously, he missed the entire campaign this past season due to injury, battling migraines and whatnot, so his future certainly has some question marks on it, and you can't help but wonder if that number 2 overall pick, what his future holds. So we'll see what happens, and we are going to talk a little bit further about Nolan Patrick later in this video. Now, looking at the UFAs, you have guys that were basically brought in as bottom 6 forwards that are, role players, which are Nate Thompson, Derek Grant, and Tyler Pitlick. And you've also got defenseman Justin Braun, who they had brought in as well last year, and backup goaltender Brian Elliott. Now, I wouldn't be completely shocked if Elliott came back on a shorter-term deal, but at the same time, wouldn't be surprising if the Flyers explored the goalie market, because as we've talked about numerous times here, there is a lot of goalies going to be on the move this offseason. There's a bit of a goaltending carousel between goalies that are going to be traded or have free agency rights right now, so clearly they could explore to see what else is out there, but at the end of the day, would not be surprised if they come back and settle on another Brian Elliott short-term deal to back up Carter Hart here for the next year or two. So when it comes to Justin Braun, again, I wouldn't be completely shocked if he re-signed with the Flyers, but no guarantee. They do have a lot of defensemen, and obviously one of those defensemen like Shane Gostisbehere is going to be a hot topic here in our next segment. It's debatable whether or not he returns as well, and whether or not they trade him will likely depend on what they do here with Braun. So there's some moving parts on the blue line that should be interesting. Now let's jump into what we call the top burning questions for this team as they head into the offseason. Now, like I mentioned, Shane Gostisbehere is right at the top of this list. They're trade bait players that have been in the rumor mill for some time now, especially throughout the playoffs and his return to play, is Shane Gostisbehere and actually James Van Riemsdyk as well. Van Riemsdyk's making $7 million, has a couple years left on his deal. Even though he, had some decent moments in the playoffs, he can still score. But the game has changed enough that he's really good in tight around the net. He can certainly put the puck in the net. But he's not the strongest overall winger. He's not the very quickest. So obviously there's some talk around his contract. But I think he would be difficult to move now. However, when it comes to Shane Gostisbehere, I think that they won't have too hard a time. We got 3 years at $4.25 million, a former 60-point defenseman. I know we revealed a lot of the injuries he went through last year. Had a surgical procedure, was having problems with a knee. That obviously played a big role in his point production and how he could play last year. So for the second year in a row, he had a frustrating season. But I do think the likelihood now, more than ever, that he gets traded is certainly quite high. And I don't think it's going to take too much to pry him away from the Flyers, but they have some other holes on their blue line, like I said, with Justin Braun being a free agent. Obviously, Provorov is the top defenseman. Myers is definitely going to get re-signed. They got Travis Sanheim. You've got Hag back there now as well. You still got Samuel Morin in the system, who's battled so many injuries. It's crazy. I'm not sure what his future holds. So obviously, guys like Gostisbehere and Braun are certainly going to play, a questionable role in this team moving forward. So would not be surprised if one of them comes back, but I would think it's pretty likely that Gostisbehere finally moves on. And if he does, that could end up making room for them to keep Justin Braun on as a free agent and return him back to the lineup here. But at the same time, he could explore free agency and find work elsewhere. Not really sure exactly what their plans are in that regard. Now, after another failed playoff season, you can't help but wonder if they could do something more significant with the core members of this team. So I'm looking at players like Claude Giroux, Jake Voracek especially. I would not think a player like a Kevin Hayes, who was just recently signed, would be going anywhere. I would also think a player like Sean Couturier would not be going anywhere. Couturier is one of the best two-way centers in the NHL. Selke Trophy winner. So clearly, that wouldn't make any sense. But, Voracek and Giroux have been there a long time, and they're just not getting it done, especially when it matters most in the playoffs. Giroux does have a form of a no-trade clause, but Voracek, on the other hand, does not. Now, there's been some chatter about Voracek in the past maybe being moved, but nothing really ever came to be. Not something that really drug on too long either, but it could be a time that we see something like that, from Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers. I mean, this team has been good in the regular season for a while and just not really taking steps forward, and those two guys just haven't really gotten it done when it matters most. So we'll see if they do something more significant, but moving a guy like JVR, like I said, is going to be challenging. So I'm not really sure what other moves they're going to be able to do within the forward system. And you can't help but wonder, too, about Nolan Patrick. I mean, what does his future hold, really? I mean, he missed the entire season. If he can be healthy and come back next year, there was even some talk about maybe he could be traded, because obviously they signed Kevin Hayes. If Patrick comes back, he's going to be a number 3 center, likely. But even then, I mean, they have pretty good depth down the middle as it is, that they could even afford to trade Nolan Patrick if he's healthy. Now, of course, until they can get him proven to be healthy, it might not be something they can even really do. I'm not sure other teams would be interested, but I had suggested a trade with the Winnipeg Jets. Maybe they should look into a guy like a Nick Ehlers or a Patrick Laine and offer up a combination of players that would include like a Shane Gostisbehere as well as a Nolan Patrick, which would kind of fill a couple holes in the Jets lineup. So I don't know what the future holds for Patrick, but once he is healthy, I could see a real possibility that they could explore trading him. I'm just not sure that's going to get done this season, obviously because of all the question marks around his health. But he's another player, though, that you can't help but question his future because of everything he's been through, and he does need a new contract, which I don't imagine is going to come very expensive, assuming they get him re-signed. So let me know what moves you expect to see from the Philadelphia Flyers. Are they going to do something more significant and shake up this core to try to take the team forward? Or are we just going to see some minor tinkering from Chuck Fletcher as they try to move forward into next season and hope they can build upon the success of the past couple regular seasons? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.